John the Morgile here, checking in for this will be section 9. Um, chapter 8, video 9 of the series, including the introduction, which would have been the first one. So, again, this is Confusion in the Cosmos by Miguel Stephano. Real quick before I start, just if y'all could say a prayer for my wife Mina's in the hospital since last night. She was having trouble breathing and was having some chest pains. Turns out she was walking around with a broken rib. So hopefully she'll be okay. But wow, it's so lonely around without her, man, you know? So anyway, so we'll get right into part 8 and the stars. Again, this is Confusion in the Cosmos by Miguel Stephano. So starting with Job 38:33, do you know the ordinances of the heavens or fix their rule over the earth? Of all the realizations that this author experienced leading through this process of acquiring new eyes to see the cosmos, he would have to say the biggest punch in the gut was the first night he viewed a star with a high-powered camera. He's viewed stars through the years with telescopes, but even that didn't prepare him for what he beheld. I'm going to expound on this later in this section, but first we need to look at the scriptural account of these heavenly luminaries called the stars. I've always gotten somewhat amused when I read the creation account in Genesis when I get to the part where it references stars being made almost as an afterthought. It's describing some pretty heavy stuff, and then in verse 16 it's almost like, oh, and by the way, he made the stars too. So he's talking of Genesis 1:16. God made the two great lights, the greater light to govern the day and the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. Right. We really don't get a lot of detail about these celestial bodies of the twilight, but let's start our gaze into the stars by looking at what the scriptures have to say in regard to stars being created. So Genesis 1:14, and God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and it was so. By the word of the Lord of heavens were made, and by the breath of his mouth all their host. So that's Psalm 33:6. Isaiah 45:12. It is I who made the earth and created men upon it. I stretched out the heavens with my hands, and I ordained all their host. Isaiah 40:26. Lift up your eyes on high and see who has created these stars. The one who leads forth their host by number, he calls them all by name, because of the greatness of his might and the strength of his power, not one of them is missing. And then Job 38:7, when the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God and angels shouted for joy. Or like all the sons of God, parenthetical angels shouted for joy. Job 38:31, can you bind the chains of the Pleiades or loose the cords of Orion? Job 38:32, can you bring forth Mazzaroth in his season? Mazzaroth in his season? Or can you guide Arcturus with his sons? Knowest thou the ordinances of heaven? Can thou set the dominion thereof in the earth? And then Amos 5:8, he who made the Pleiades and Orion and changes deep darkness into morning, who also darkens the day into night, who calls for the waters of the sea and pours them out on the surface of the earth. The Lord is his name. And then There's another quote here, which is also from Job. Um, who makes the bear Arcturus, Orion, and the Pleiades, and the chambers of the south, who does great things, unfathomable, and wondrous works without number. So the stars were created and set into the firmament within their presiding positions. Sorry, y'all, I'm having trouble keeping this thing steady here. The stars were created and set into the firmament within their presiding positions by the power of the Most High's breath. He literally spoke them into existence on the fourth day while ordaining them to move in their obligatory ordinances. We will probably never know if the stars are attached directly to the firmament, embedded inside the firmament, or placed away by an unknown distance underneath this miraculous dome. What we do know for sure is the stars were made to light up the night for understanding signs and seasons and tracking the days and the years. Doesn't this almost sound like an automated calendar or a giant sky clock? Job 38:33, do you know the ordinances of the heavens or fix their rule over the earth? And then it gives the definition of ordinance: an authoritative order, a decree or direction. And then ordained, to establish or order by appointment, decree, or law. It's very intriguing that the ancients were so knowledgeable of the movements of these ordinances that they could read the sky and therefore interpret the coming seasons. It does stand to reason, since the actual ordinances and their meanings were most likely explained to Adam and Eve and understood by the angelic realm as well. The sky was probably like their big screen TV back in those days, and they understood when something was different or out of order. This is why the wise men, or the magi, followed a strange star seen in the east that they were not familiar with when Yeshua was born. This indicated to them that something of extreme importance was taking place. Matthew 2:1, now after Yeshua was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east and have come to worship him. Then Herod secretly called the Magi and determined from them the exact time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search carefully for the child, and when you have found him, report to me so that I too may come and worship him. There are some who would say that this author's head is often in the clouds, but in truth, he's always been a sky watcher, a stargazer, and a cloud observer, spending a lot of time outdoors. Over the last 30 months, however, he's been studying the stars with increased regularity by purposeful intent in order to gain understanding with this complex puzzle piece of the cosmos. This doesn't make him an expert or an astronomer or anything other than an experienced observer. I can tell you with certainty that as a result of this observing, my confusion level in the cosmos has dropped all the way from a 9 down to a 1 as a result. My conclusion over this period may be somewhat controversial, and I will explain this within this section. But up front, I will say everything we are told is just completely wrong. Again, we're supposed to believe that the Earth is spinning over 1,000 miles an hour while also rotating 60,600 miles an hour. For the moment, we're going to disregard all the other preposterous speeds because we went through this earlier in part 2 of the book. But we're instructed that stars are distant suns for other planets and are alleged to be 5.88 trillion miles from us. Now, in scientism's defense, they do admit that it is difficult to calculate the stars' distances, and I would agree. However, I assure you, although we've been told the sun is 93 million miles away, a more realistic distance for the sun in reality would be closer to a range of 3,000 plus or minus miles. 3,000 miles plus or minus, right? Since the sun, in my opinion, is 92 uh, 92,997,000 miles closer than what we're told. This disillusion of distance also applies to the distant stars as well. There's no way to know how far away they are exactly, but how could I view a star with only a decent zoom camera on a clear night with perfect clarity if it's 5.8 trillion miles away, right? Could it be my outstanding equipment or expert photography skills? No, it's because the stars are much closer than what we've been told. The YouTube channel Richie from Boston uploaded a good example of this illusion with a Nikon P900 camera when he filmed the moon in the sky and then filmed a skyscraper that was confirmed to be 4.7 miles from his same position. While filming the moon, he could see it in much greater detail than the large building that was much closer at only 4.7 miles away. Now, this doesn't mean that the moon is closer than the building in any respect, but it is a good example of how the luminary circuits are all much closer than we've been led to believe. If you'd like to see this video, the title is, quote, "Proof the Moon is not 238,900 miles away." It's 8 minutes long, and at the time of this writing, the video has not yet been deleted and has over 1.7 million views. While watching this video, pay attention to the part of the moon that you can see through. This demonstrates its transparency by disproving its likelihood of being a spherical rock in space. You'll notice a theme throughout this book. Everything we are discussing, upon further observation and investigation, reveals a much different reality, one that does not contradict the biblical teachings. As a matter of fact, the more time spent observing, the more you will see this actually proves the Bible's explanations. Let's read again a passage that we read a few moments ago, Isaiah 40:26. Lift up your eyes on high and see who has created these stars, the one who leads forth their host by number. He calls them all by name because of the greatness of his might and the strength of his power. Not one of them is missing. Again, Isaiah. So we're encouraged to investigate the sky and understand Yod-He Vav-He's creation through the accounts given to us in scriptures, and not leave it to people with hidden agendas that may mislead us on all the quote-unquote other things that may potentially be out there. We are told to test and prove all things while holding fast to what is true. If you haven't looked into the sky for a while, I recommend that you schedule a little time to do so. We are so distracted these days, having all our media options and screens for entertainment, that this seems to be a lost and forgotten activity anymore. But this is one way we can connect with our Creator and stand before Him in reverence while admiring the awe of His magnificent power. Then we'll go to Psalm 8:3. When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have ordained. Psalm 136. The moon and stars to rule by day, for his loving kindness is everlasting. Jeremiah 31. Thus says the Lord, who gives the sun for light by day and fixed order of the moon and the stars for light by night, who stirs up the sea so that its waves roar. The Lord of hosts is his name. And then Job 22:12, is not the Most High in the height of heaven? Look also at the distant stars. How high are they? And then Genesis 15:5, and he took him outside and said, now look towards the heaven and count the stars, if you're able to count them. And he said to him, so shall your descendants be. Praise him, all his angels. Praise him, all his hosts. Praise him, sun and moon. Praise him, all the stars of light. Praise him, highest heavens and the waters that are above the heavens. That was Psalm 148. Daniel 12. Those who have insight will shine brightly like the brightness of the expanse or firmament of heaven, and those who lead the many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. And then 1 Corinthians 15:41. There is one glory of the sun, and another glory of the moon, and another glory of the stars, for star differs from star in glory. Okay, so this author mentioned earlier that viewing a star for the first time with a decent zoom camera was a punch in the gut for him. Although he's spent much time gazing at them and even watching amateur close-up videos of them, he was still not quite prepared for what he would see in person those first couple of evenings. As opposed to replacing our telescope that would no longer accept a software update and connect to the internet, we opted for purchasing the reasonably priced Nikon P900 for versatility reasons as a tool to investigate stars, among other long-range matters. This camera was getting good reviews and featured a 16.1 megapixel feature with an 83 times optical zoom attribute. After receiving the camera and tripod, we set it up on a standby to wait for a clear viewing evening. The first fairly clear night arrived in a few days, and we were able to bring the first star into focus up close and face-to-face on the camera screen. Once in focus, I stood there dazed in amazement while staring at something that I've never seen in person before. Even though many people have been reporting their wonderment while seeing these stars with this particular camera model as well, part of me was speechless, and the other part of me was really disgusted for believing all the outer space TV shows that I watched for so long. I'm not exaggerating when I explain the feeling of disgust and immediate betrayal that I felt from our esteemed pseudoscience world. The only way I can really describe this first experience was that I was staring into something that was undeniably alive and full of a majestic energy. I had thought as a child that a star was either just a twinkling thing in the distance or possibly a distant sun in a galaxy far away. But to actually see these stars with a good view on a clear night was both paralyzing and mesmerizing for those first several minutes. I'm guessing this must be where the phrase starstruck came from, but he really was. Since that first experience, every star we've been able to capture on the perfect viewing nights has been completely unique from the next. They move with distinguishing purpose, some almost appearing to dance right before you. Many emerge before the camera lens almost acrobatic-like. They are set into excited motion while displaying different colors of the spectrum, with each one being entirely distinctive and individual from the next. They appear to have disparate vibrations, even appearing to be on distinct frequencies, sometimes even materializing like they are set within a water column, oddly enough. I am certain after viewing these heavenly hosts that light up the night sky that they are definitely alive or spiritual beings of some sort. Now I see why they appear to twinkle or sparkle in the distance to the naked eye. They all display their own light by demonstrating their own individual glory, which must be why they were all given names, right? Psalm 147:4, he counts the number of the stars, he gives names to all of them. When you read scriptures describing these luminaries, I can attest that they actually hold true, but you don't have to take my word for it. Try it for yourself. You may see with your own eyes that the narrative given by NASA has been misleading, to say the very least. Their composite artist renditions are nothing at all like what you can view for yourself. I've seen nothing in the sky that matches their public narrative at all, and it's now obvious to me that NASA is promoting illusions through a theater for deception. They claim that stars are actually suns for other planetary systems, but in my observation, this is far from the truth. They seem to be exactly what the Most High said they were, unique lights in the night sky for signs and seasons on the earth. If you set a camera to view the night sky with a long exposure time, time-lapse mode, and play it back, you can capture the constant motion of the stars' movements through the evening, known as star trails. They move according to a clockwise movement by rotating westward, revolving around Polaris, the North Star. The star trails that you can film at home with your own camera will reveal a circular time lapse of their constant journey through the night sky. These stars collectively rotate through the year in a rotating elliptical oval moving over the circle of the Earth, finally ending at the exact same position every single year. How would this work on a spinning globe and a spinning vortex Milky Way with these bodies trillions of miles away while everything orbits at just mind-bending speeds? Even though the cosmos is painted for us to be so chaotic, enormous, and dangerous, did you know that the stars are completely predictable on any night, at any time of the year, and any time of the night with 100% precision? If you were not aware of this and wanted to start checking this out for yourself, buy your own quote unquote guide to the stars map for about $20. All you do is point north and align the correct time and date, and the sky layout will match exactly as it does on the guide. You can see where all the constellations are at any given time while identifying their names and being able to predict their locations, all without NASA. A couple questions. With the predictability and precision of their annual movements documented by this simple chart, confirm the biblical explanation of them having specific ordinances. And I'll just throw up these pictures real quick if I can. So that's just an image of the star chart that he was referring to, right? So is it feasible under the globe model speeds for a star to ever achieve the same position once, let alone perfect orchestration and the precision predictability that we can observe in nature? You may be wondering why I haven't mentioned any planets yet. Well, are you ready for this? Because there are no planets. They're all stars. Now, don't slam this book shut just yet. Please hear me out. For thousands of years, these quote-unquote planets have always been known as the wandering stars. The word planet goes back to the ancient Greeks, with the term planet literally meaning wandering star or the wanderers. The name planet was originally applied to moving lights or celestial bodies that appeared to move independently of the fixed star's rotation. In antiquity, the original 7 wandering stars were known as the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. The meaning of these so-called planets have transformed through the years by modern science, claiming that planets are not stars anymore, but perfect giant rocks flying around, reflecting the sun's light. Today, the current planet list is Earth, Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, Neptune, Venus, Uranus, and Mercury. But this is subject to change because Pluto was pulled from the planet list in 2006 after being downgraded or degrassified into a dwarf planet. Funny that it's now a dwarf planet, since it ironically bore the image of the head of Disney's cartoon character Pluto. Will there be 7 dwarf planets in total someday, being led by a snowy and white magic princess? I believe that when they added Earth to the planet list, they simply added the letter T to the word plane, therefore transforming the fixed and motionless Earth into being declared the round and spinning planet that it has now evolved into. The historical definition of planet is a celestial body or star, distinguished from the fixed stars by having apparent motion of its own. Today's definition has added a little more. Definition of a planet is now a celestial body moving in an elliptical orbit around a star. But what is a star? Well, the definition of a star is a natural luminous body visible in the sky, especially at night. We were tricked into believing planets are large balls of mass spinning around like other possible versions of Earth. But do not be mistaken, these are all lights, exactly as every other unique star in the vast night sky. Now, isn't it interesting that NASA claims these stars are suns for other planets, but Yod-He Vod-He, or Yahweh, said that these stars are lights for the Earth? You can find many videos of these quote unquote planets being filmed in reality by amateur photographers and videographers to compare against the CGI artist renderings of what they want us to think that they are. That is, if you can do some savvy searches while spending some time getting around Google's new gatekeeping algorithms. Have you ever realized that these quote unquote planet names are also the names of false pagan gods? Have you ever noticed these are consistently in the news feeds by alleging new discoveries about them, but never actually showing a photo or video of a planet ever? Why does every image furnished to us by NASA have to be a CGI artist rendering, right? So here we have quote unquote planets that are actually just stars with the names of false gods. And these are the main focus for potential other life in the ever expanding solar system, per the word of scientism. Are you catching on to the reason for all these cosmos related lies and seeing this illusion for what it could be yet? If not, keep reading. We will get there in a later part, I promise. Hey, Nathan Oakley, what's up there, brother man? I see you in the chat there, man. We need to link up, brother, for sure. Can we find anything scripturally about these wandering stars or so-called planets? Jude 1:13, wild waves of the sea, casting up their own shame like foam, wandering stars for whom the black darkness has been reserved forever. Enoch 18:11, and there I beheld 7 stars like great blazing mountains, and like spirits entreating me. Then the angel said, this place, until the consummation of heaven and earth, will be the prison for the stars and the host of heaven. The stars which roll over fire are those which transgress the commandment of God before the time arrived, for they came not in their proper season. Therefore was he offended with them and bound them until the period of the consummation of their crimes in the secret year. Again, that's from the book of Enoch. These wandering stars were similar to the fallen angels that left their habitation that blatantly sinned. They left their ordinances and went their own way against the Most High's commandment. Ironically, it is also this author's belief that this would have taken place around the same time as when the pivotal angelic incursion occurred, and just like these angels, these wandering stars will be punished for their rebellion as well. Isn't it ironic that we are to look into the sky and understand the Most High's power through this whole creation, but these rebellious quote-unquote planets seem to be the focus of mainstream scientism and the outer space illusion? Are you seeing the problem here? And so we go to Deuteronomy here, and beware not to lift up your eyes to heaven and see the sun and the moon and the stars, all the host of heaven, and be drawn away and worship them and serve them, those which the Lord God has allotted to all the peoples under the whole of heaven. So again, that was Deuteronomy 4:19. Like anything else, this viewing of the heavenly hosts can be taken way too far by crossing over into being drawn away in worship. I think the idea of worship is sometimes misunderstood by seeming to be more blatant. Thank you, Brother Nathan. Super chat, smash the super chat and support the channel. Yeah, no doubt. More of a blatant display in bowing before something and performing some ritual while giving something praise. But the idea of worship can actually be more subtle. So let's define this term. Worship, one definition is to honor or show reverence for as a divine being or supernatural power. And then 2, to regard with great or extravagant respect, honor, or devotion. By this definition, you can consider how many people today are actually honoring a sports figure, musician, or Hollywood celebrity through an unintended form of worship. It is also ironic that these powerful people are often referred to as stars, right? This concept was emphasized in Deuteronomy 4 because people were worshiping and serving these celestial bodies in antiquity by also using astrology and the zodiac movements as their guide, as opposed to the words given by the Most High, creator of all things. What may have started as admiration became a deep form of worship by also involving occultist ceremonies and even blood sacrifices dedicated to their false gods. But in this regard, there is nothing new under the sun. So, just going back to quoting a few scriptures, Isaiah 47, you are wearied with your many counsels. Let now the astrologers, those who prophesy by the stars, those who predict by the new moons, stand up and save you from what will come upon you. And then Daniel 1:20, and in all matters of wisdom and understanding, that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were all in his realm. Jeremiah 19:13, the houses of Jerusalem and the houses of the kings of Judah will be defiled like the place of Topheth, because all the houses on whose rooftops they burned sacrifices to all the heavenly host and poured out drink offerings to other small g gods. And then Zephaniah 1:5, and them that worship the host of heaven upon the housetops, and them that worship and that swear by the Lord, and that swear by Malcham or Moloch. Deuteronomy 17:3, and has gone and served other small g gods and worshiped them, or the sun or the moon, or any of the heavenly host which I have not commanded. 2 Kings 23, he did away with the idolatrous priests, whom the kings of Judah had appointed to burn incense in the high places of the cities of Judah and in the surrounding area of Jerusalem. Also those who burned incense to Baal, to the sun and the moon, and to the constellations, and to all the hosts of heaven. 2 Kings 17, they forsook all the commandments of their Lord their God, and made for themselves molten images, even 2 calves, and made an Asherah, and worshipped all the host of heaven, and served Baal. And then 2 Kings 21, for he rebuilt the high places which Hezekiah his father had destroyed, and he erected altars for Baal, and made an Asherah, as Ahab king of Israel had done, and worshipped all the host of heaven, and served them. A couple more verses here. 2 Chronicles 33:3, for he rebuilt the high places which Hezekiah his father had broken down. He also erected altars for the Baals, and made Asherim or Asherah poles, and worshipped all the host of heaven, and served them. And then we got Acts 7:42. Then God turned and gave them up to worship the host of heaven, as it is written in the book of prophets. O ye house of Israel, have you offended to me, slain beasts and sacrifices by the space of 40 years in the wilderness? And then finally, Jeremiah 8:2, they will spread them out to the sun, the moon, and to all the host of heaven, which they have loved, and which they have served, and which they have gone after, and which they have sought, and which they have worshipped. They will not be gathered or buried. They will be as dung on the face of the ground. Right, so there is a parallel theme developing here, aside from the heavenly hosts of worship. Notice how Baal, Moloch, Asherah, and the other common culprits being served and worshipped alongside of these. Sorry, y'all. Lost my spot here. Alongside of these hosts. Keep this in the back of your mind, and we will revisit this later in the roots of deception. This author mentioned this earlier in the chapter, that he had formulated an opinion on stars that would be somewhat controversial. I hope in the reading of these star or host of heaven teachings that you may have already picked up on the association that I saw in reading the texts. But to go one step further, my conclusion also stemmed from observing other things as well. Through my years of sky watching, I've seen hundreds of what we would call shooting stars in the nocturnal sky. Throughout these occasions over time, I started noticing that these shooting stars would sometimes move from side to side or even rising vertically up from the ground.
That that might be better. Appreciate that, man. I can see the chat pop up. That's hopefully that's better. Let me know if it's not. Appreciate you. Um, through my years of sky watching, I've seen hundreds of. Oh wait, I already read that. So side to side, or even rising vertically out from the ground, or on an upward trajectory. This became very confusing under the globe model because they are supposed to be meteors burning up from space or cosmic specks of dust rapidly entering the Earth's atmosphere. Most shooting stars are only visible in their bright flare for about 3 to 5 seconds on an average and appear to be only a few hundred feet above the ground, sometimes less. That has been my experience anyway, and this is where this may start getting more interesting. The most perplexing part of this was watching shooting stars rise up vertically, and after repeated observations, it became clear that I was actually seeing what I was actually seeing was a glowing ethereal type of entity as opposed to a hot rock coming from space. I wrestled with this for a while and asked Yahweh to provide an answer by allowing me to understand this phenomenon. A short time went by, and there were two occasions when I ended up seeing strange lights in the sky early in the evening that were beyond comprehension. This was not offering me clarity, only furthering my confusion. The first incident was written off as unexplainable. It was a large, pulsating orb of some kind, but was blocked away in my memory because that's what we do sometimes when we see things that don't make much sense or match our collective paradigm. We just block it out and forget about it, right? It may have only been about a week or so later when the second incident occurred while my wife was filming the moon in the westward sky around 6:30 p.m. I was standing in the distance watching her, and then in the north sky, I saw these two light orbs pulsating that looked like nothing I've ever seen with my own eyes. After a brief hesitation, I shouted for her to look in that direction, and by the time she was able to see it and move the tripod, reset the camera, and bring it into focus, they moved just out of our view by descending beyond the top of the forest tree line. This time was more baffling than the first incident that I had written off and forgotten about because it was not only a second occurrence, but I was able to see these longer in duration and knew without a doubt that they were not any kind of helicopter, airplane, or figment of my imagination. I would not call them a UFO per se, as we think of them either, because these were just moving lights. After this incident, if someone watched me as I walked outdoors, they would probably think I was one step away from the loony bin by wondering if I was watching for black helicopters following me around or something, right? I was pretty discouraged that we missed documenting two different occurrences by video, and now I was on the constant lookout for additional sightings to capture. I will tell you, after you see something in the sky that is unexplainable like that, you can't be outside without constantly looking in every visible direction. It's kind of funny. Everything that gets your attention as a light would at night made my neck sore by turning my head so much. I felt like I was watching a tennis match at Wimbledon, constantly turning from side to side, always thinking, what's that? Oh, an airplane? Squirrel, right? What's over there? Oh, it's another airplane. Whoa, what is that? Now it's just another airplane. Okay. So this calmed down after a little while, and 2 weeks later, my wife and I got back from dinner on a Saturday night. It was perfect weather to just sit outside and have a glass of wine on the patio. While looking out to the north, I kept thinking about those strange lights, and we started to discuss these strange anomalies that we had seen. We were talking about how we couldn't really mention them to others because it just sounds so crazy, and we were voicing out our frustrations due to not documenting them with any photos or videos successfully. While we were talking and staring into the sky, all of a sudden, I see something in the north that was relatively a short distance away and moving in our direction. I yelled, "Look, what the heck is that?" Okay, I'm not sure those were the exact words. They could have been slightly different. Suddenly, a grouping of large, white, floating orbs emerged, one after the other. They were not a constant glowing light, but more of a pulsating light that partially blinked or pulsed about every 3 seconds or so. After realizing what we were seeing, my wife jumped into action by running towards the back door to find the camera on the tripod, stand somewhere inside the house, while I started videoing these with my phone in complete admiration and disbelief. I remember wondering if I should be running for a firearm and trying to anticipate what could be coming out of this, but I honestly felt the most defenseless that I have ever felt in my life. I was trying to figure out, are these things good or are these things bad? What the heck are they and what's going on? To make a long story short, we watched over 30 of these strange pulsating lights pass over us while seeming to be only about 100 to 150 feet from the ground, all moving the same speed at slightly varying elevations at kind of a single file line. They just kept coming and coming, passing over, and just out in front of us, almost as if it was only for us to see. I don't remember too many times in my life that I can compare to the feeling of that moment, but humbled and shaken incredulity about sums it up. This whole event lasted about 7 or 8 minutes in total, and after they were gone, the clear sky that we had just a few minutes earlier was now eerily becoming foggy, adding to the cryptic nature of this whole experience. We just sat there after it was all over, staring at each other, wondering, what did we just witness? How did they appear at the exact moment that we were talking about them? We didn't go to sleep until probably 4 a.m. that night. The whole next day, I couldn't think about anything else, and that next afternoon asked Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, Yahweh, to tell me what these things were. The response was instantaneous, and if you are one who listens for God's voice, although inaudible, you just know sometimes when he answers you, and his response was, "You asked to see angels if you could bear to see them." Immediately, I realized that months prior, I had asked him to reveal angels to me someday if I could handle it. A feeling of wow came over me, but even though the answer seemed so clear and I felt relieved, weeks later I had doubts by second guessing the reply received from him. Some time passed by, and I finally admitted to him that I was doubting and unsure in the response I received, while pleading my level of confusion on this matter by not wanting to believe something is incorrect, or something that is incorrect. So I asked him if he could somehow let me know if the response I was given was actually from him or just a random thought in my mind. No more than 10 seconds later, while again gazing into the north sky, a larger than normal shooting star came directly over me from the south, moving north, with a long glowing tail that lasted twice as long as most other shooting stars I've seen. I get goosebumps writing about this and almost get teary-eyed just thinking about this moment. It's now, whoops, sorry. It's now safe to say that he did give me the answer the first time. The ancients who encountered angels in person referred to them as the shining ones because they actually shined like bright light. When you view stars as described earlier with a zoom camera, they appear very alive and somewhat similar to what we believe are shooting stars. If these shooting stars can be viewed moving upward from the ground or even sideways, we can rule out anything to do with outer space. My conclusion of stars is they could very well be a spiritual or angelic entity of some kind. I've considered the possibility of these beings manifesting as streaks of light to our eyes while being inside another dimension and possibly traveling and doing their assigned tasks. Since we know that some angels are messengers, I've also wondered if these shooting stars could be an entity that appear when messages are delivered to us, similar to what I just explained with the experience that I've had firsthand. Could this be the reason why these stars were worshipped in antiquity? At a minimum, stars are for sure somehow related to the angelic realm in some regard, if not one and the same. It is just not clear with the forms they can take physically and how they can manifest. But check this out, Acts 7:43. Yea, ye took up the tabernacle of Moloch and the star of your god Remphan, figures which you have made to worship them, and I will carry you away beyond Babylon. The star of your god? Could angels somehow correlate with or directly be connected to a star in the sky? Could angels be connected to a certain star that is their actual portal to allow them to travel in and out of the heavens? If that were true, could this be why they worship certain stars and name them after certain gods? Small g gods, right? Okay. These stars actually fought from heaven. Judges 5:20, the stars fought from heaven, from their courses they fought against Sisera. And then the star gets a key, Revelation 9:1. Then the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star from heaven which had fallen to the earth, and the key of the bottomless pit was given to him. Here are some interesting verses from Yeshua referring to himself being a star. Revelation 22:16, I, Yeshua, have sent my angel to testify to you these things for the churches. I am the root and the descendant of David, the bright morning star. Revelation 2:25, nevertheless, what you have, hold fast until I come. He who overcomes and he who keeps my deeds until the end, to him I will give authority over the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron, as the vessels of the potter are broken to pieces, as I also have received authority from my Father, and I will give him the morning star. Then 2 Peter 1:19, so we have the prophetic word made more sure, to which you do well to pay attention as to a lamp shining in a dark place until the day dawns and the morning star arises in your hearts. So again, that was 2 Peter. So interesting, isn't it? Let's read the second half of this story found in Acts about a time when the Apostle Paul allowed a crippled person to be healed at Lystra and to walk for the first time. Acts 14:8. And there sat a certain man at Lystra, impotent in his feet, being crippled from his mother's womb, who had never walked. The same heard Paul speak, who steadfastly beholding him and perceiving that he had faith to be healed, said with a loud voice, stand upright on your feet. And he leaped up and walked. And when the people saw what Paul had done, they lifted up their voices, saying in the speech of Lysonia, the gods are come down to us in the likeness of men, and they are called Barnabas, Jupiter, and Paul, Mercurius, because he was a chief speaker. Because Paul, so that was Acts 14:8, because Paul healed this man by the power of Yeshua, the crowd thought Paul and Barnabas were small g gods in the flesh and named them after the star Jupiter and the star Mercury. Notice they aren't habitable planets, but stars of light. As weird as this seems to us, they actually did associate small g gods with stars. Paul reacted to their shock by clarifying that they were not gods at all, and that Yeshua is the only one to be worshipped. The beings that have been referred to as gods to people for thousands of years are the angelic in nature, and also in some cases, the renowned Nephilim hybrid titans of old, mighty men of old of renown. These beings fell, and in going their own way against the Most High Creator, demanded certain forms of worship for themselves from humans. It is worth noting here that the ancient Egyptians believed that gods descended from Orion's belt as well as the star Sirius, And interestingly enough, the three pyramids of Giza are believed to be oriented by matching precisely to the constellation of Orion's belt. So there is definitely something more to the stars than meets the eye, and this author will go further with this line of thinking with another provocative theory that we'll have to conclude in part 17, Cosmology Meets Eschatology. So a few questions to round off the section. What could be the reason for such blatant misrepresentation of these stars and constant announcing of potential deep space discoveries? Could it be to keep the actual stars hidden from view because people might question the Big Bang false narrative? Could the illusion be Satan's plan to simply hide all of Yahweh's creation so people are kept from him by thinking the Bible is a fairy tale? We'll be discussing the reason for this deception, and we will get there in another part. So that's going to end section 8 of the audiobook. I'm going to wrap up this recording here. But again, thank you guys for joining me for this recording. It's just so much easier for me to record the audiobook here of Confusion in the Cosmos, doing it live instead of trying to record it, edit it, render it, upload it. It's a very time-consuming process. So I do appreciate you guys sitting here with me, and more to come. I've got some other content in the works as well, some feature videos that I'm working on currently. So love you guys very much. Good to see all of you here. Good to see you, Nathan Oakley, in the chat. I do need to link up with you. I love your show, man. And again, if y'all don't mind, just say a little prayer for my wife, Mina. She's in the hospital right now. She's been walking around with a broken rib for a few days. Didn't realize it. So wow. All right, guys. See you real soon. Love you, and take care.